Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We're going to have an interesting panel now. I've got three distinguished speakers, which I'm going to introduce at the moment. But my name's Dr. Piers Clark. I'm the chairman of ISLE Utilities. ISLE is a specialist technical consultancy, and we're running the Innovate at IWS event just in the corner. Our session for the next hour has the title, Long-Term Investment and Development Opportunities in the Mena Water Market. And we've got three very distinguished, very capable, very experienced speakers. And the way we're going to work today is I'm going to introduce them, and then each of them are going to come up and they're going to give a short presentation, 10, 15 minutes. We'll take questions at the end of all three presentations. So we're going to hear the three presentations, get the broad context of what's going on, and then we'll use the remaining time to ask questions and have perhaps a bit of a debate. As I'm sure you're aware, you have an iPad in front of you, and that is the perfect forum for submitting a question. You can do it anonymously, or you can proudly state your name. You submit your questions, it'll arrive with me, and I'll coordinate the Q&A session at the end. So let me introduce our three speakers. The first speaker is Miguel Angel Sanz, who is the Director for Strategic Transport Treatment Infrastructures at SUEZ Environment. Miguel has an industrial engineering degree, which he got back in 1981, which you look at him, there is no way he looks like a man who did his degree in 1981. I was 11 back then, and he looks younger than me. How can he have a full head of hair, and yet I'm heading towards as bald as a coot? Life is not fair. But that's perhaps one of the lessons we'll learn today. So he has an industrial engineering degree, 1981, from Bilbao Technical School of Engineering. He joined SUEZ in 1983, which means that this year we'll be marking 33 years with the company. Absolutely phenomenal. He's held positions in Spain and France, and his positions have ranged from technical director to desalination manager to proposal director and business development director, and of course his current role now as director for strategic development treatment infrastructures. Perhaps particularly relevant to our discussions here, he is a board director of the IDA, the International Desalination Association, and he spent 8 years on the board of the directors of the European Desal Society, and he's published over 50 papers on that topic. It's a pleasure to have you on our board. Our second speaker is Errol Edwards, sitting in the middle there. Thank you. Errol is the commercial director for B6 Concessions and Assets, and he's a board director on at least 3 concession-related water reuse companies that they have here in the UAE. He's been a long time in the UAE, so he's got a depth of experience here. He's been over 10 years, 2003 I think it was, so 13 years in the UAE region. And he's got a lot of experience on a whole variety of contracts and structures, ranging from PPPs to EPC contracts and boots and big contracts and small contracts. And I'm hoping that what we're going to glean out of his presentation is some of that experience and the learning that we can take there. 25 years experience across a wide variety of countries. I've got a list here of countries that's longer than my arm of places where he's worked. But I was particularly taken by the fact that prior to joining B6, he did 13 years with Thames Water. And I also spent time at Thames Water. We didn't actually overlap. I was the commercial director at Thames Water from 2007 to 2012. And your years, I think, were prior to mine. Thames Water, as some of you might be aware, is the large London-based water utility. And working inside it is a strange organisation, but we have some shared history. Our third speaker is Dr. Alp Sarıoğlu, which I hope I've got the surname right. You did kindly say you can call me whatever you want. I've been called much worse things, so I'm hoping I can get away with that. Dr. Sariaglu is a mechanical engineer from the Swiss Institute of Lausanne, is where he got his first degree and also his PhD on polymers and composites. His career has been focused a lot in Switzerland, where he's worked for a whole variety of companies, and he joined Akim in 2011. They're obviously based in Turkey, and we're going to hear about some of the things that Akim do here in the region. And Alp is the Water Solution Director and heads the strategic business unit that sort of does chemical and equipment provision. He's going to talk through the Turkish water model, and as I'm sure many of you are aware, Turkey is a particularly high-growth market with lots of opportunities both for suppliers and investors. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's our panel. The way it's going to work is they're each going to come up, they're going to give their presentation. Please submit your questions, and once we've heard the three presentations, we'll kick off into a little bit of a panel debate. Thank you very much. Miguel, if you could come and take the stand.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the introduction. I will sell you my secret. It's very expensive. But today we are talking just on something which is interesting. We have been treating it the last 2 days here. Is how we can improve all the Mena opportunities with long-term investment. So first slide, I started to present my company because last year our group changed the name. Now we are SUEZ Group, and we have a group having all the former subsidiaries taking the same name, and we are joining all the structure in a regional way, having all the staff joining the same company and the same name. So first, we have two parts in our company. One is coming from waste, and the other is coming from water. Water, we have all the services around it, concession around. We are higher than some utilities in the world because we are giving drinking water for more than 92 million people in the world. And also in wastewater, we are serving for around 65 million people. So in desalination, we are more or less able just to supply water for more than 10 million people with more than 250 plants in the world. So we have around 10,000 plants built around the world in the last, I don't remember, last century at least. From the recycling point of view, we are more or less, we have similar figures because we are collecting millions of tons every year. So we have serving more than 57 million worldwide. We have a lot of infrastructure also, just producing energy with 47 incinerators coming from waste. And we are recycling a lot of things. We are recycling more than 40 million tons every year, coming a new life. We are present with a strong presence in 70 countries in the world, where we have a commercial, we are covering around 150 countries in the world, and we have 80,000 people worldwide in a lot of subsidiaries. Our figures this year probably reached the 15 billions, and more or less a third of our activities out of Europe. So we are an international company. We invest in a lot in research, and we have a lot of customers worldwide, more than, I think this year we reached 400,000. In our division, there is one of the part we are involved in building infrastructure. This year we changed the names. Our division is SUEZ Treatment Infrastructure, who is joining more or less the former Degermont and Sita construction areas and operating areas. So we have two activities, water and waste, covering all municipal and industrial areas, doing desalination, wastewater, biosolid, but also recycling, incineration, producing energy. We treat also hazardous waste treatment. In the industry, we treat all kinds of waters, and also, of course, we supply drinking water worldwide. We have projects worldwide. Here we have some examples of some of our last major projects where we are covering all world, more or less, and all activities in water. Drinking water, wastewater, reuse, desalination. But not only worldwide. Here we have a wide commitment in the region because we are also doing exactly the same. We have wastewater treatment plant, reuse, where it's necessary. We are participating also in IWPP. We have a lot of desalination plant in the area, especially in Bahrain, in Qatar, or Emirates, and Oman. But the target of the presentation today is just to treat what is the Mena problems. The first, as we can see in the picture today, just is coming from the year 2011 from the United Nations organization. You can see that MENA region has a lot of problem of scarcity, lack of renewable resources. So the main problem here is the only way is just optimize the existing renewable resources. But I think everybody knows perfectly that that's the only way is that to go to reuse the treated wastewater and to do desalination, but as we have understood the last day, in the more sustainable way. And the more sustainable way is giving a water cost, a water tariff affordable for the people here, despite all the difficulties there is inside. One of the possibilities is just having the participation of the private sector, because the private sector is ready just to attend all the demands of the market, investing here, even when the barrel price is going down. That's the best moment just to have a long-term commitment here, just to the credibility of the companies, where the experience is will be well used here locally. And we will try just to minimize all the risks. We have a lot of experience in desalination. We were pioneers. I think our first plant was built in the year 71, but we took a decision from the beginning is not to do thermal desalination. We decided just to go only by membrane desalination from the region. Today, I think in the following months, we are reaching the 4 million cubic meter per day plant capacity. But we are operators. We are long-term operators. Today, we are operating more than 1.2 million cubic meters per day every year. But in few weeks, we probably will increase to 1.5. We have invested a lot of money the last year just to improve the desalination, to follow in the market. And one of them is just to be more sustainable. The first is reducing energy. We can see in the graph how in some of our reference, we can reduce the energy consumption in our plants. And the trends, we are a few things, just a few gaps just to recover, because we are more or less reaching the minimum we can get by the thermodynamic. As also, in order to be more sustainable, we were also pioneers using renewable energies. First, we start in Australia. You have there 2 good references where the plants are totally fed by renewable energies, not directly connected to the grid. But Perth was running for renewable energies from the year 2010, and Melbourne in the year 2012. But also we have treated some cases using photovoltaic panels in Europe, for example, in the Barcelona seawater desalination plant. As we have still a good commitment, we are also partners of the Masdar, and we have one of the pilots using the 2 technologies. That's the first, the last generation of the Arrow technology, and we are testing there. But also we have put there inside a new technology, a breakthrough technology we are going to test, is using the brine just to produce more water, minimizing the energy consumption, taking waste heat. But a new technology we are testing there is ion exchange liquid membranes. And that's the case. I think the plant was starting in November. I was visiting yesterday the plant, and I hope a lot of, we wait for a lot of good results in the other, just to have new technologies in the future, just to keep our commitment in the innovation. The other point which is important is reuse. Reuse here is necessary, that everyone is conscious that it's necessary to do. And we have also good references having reuse. For example, here is in West Basin in California, is a wastewater coming from one of the largest Los Angeles wastewater treatment plant, Hyperion. And we have also a long-term agreement with the municipality for reuse water. But we take the wastewater treated, we have 5 different treatment lines, and we sell the water to the industry. Even the Los Angeles airport is taking recycling water coming from this plant. But all the industry close to there, we have around 300 customers who is taking this water, but also we are trying just to do indirect drinking water reuse, using with the replenishment of the groundwater reserve, because it's using more or less between 30 to 40% of the water. Another case is a local one in Qatar. We have operating the plant from the year 2009. It's a DBO project we have there. We have done 3 extensions of this plant, increasing the reuse area, testing new technologies in membranes, in tertiary treatment. We just last year we received the order of the extension, and it is one of the largest reuse plants in the region, in the Gulf region, able to treat 280,000 cubic meters per day. You can see part of the reuse water is for irrigation, but also to replenish the aquifer. So there is some experience locally, which is a good example just to increase this collaboration. The third point it's necessary to treat is take long investment from the private sector here. And the best way is the BOT. So the BOT has, everyone knows about all the advantages they have, but I think it's solving one of the main important client issues, like looking for financing, especially when you haven't in this year, and you need to face huge investment because the scarcity, the force to do it. You need to have a very good performance and to have durable assets because you are investing for a long time. This is another infrastructure, but keeping an affordable tariff. So it's a quite complicated problem. So, and therefore, we are trying to help is just because you need to, probably you have a very complex project, especially when you are doing reuse or desalination. There are no simple projects. You need to cover all the specialties and the other. So for the customer point of view, the BOT has a lot of benefits because you have a low risk for him, the no CapEx investment. There's the other company who is doing it. You know the tariff because you have a commitment to the water purchase agreement, and all is theoretically under control because you have the supervisor just to keep to see what is happening in the private companies. The private companies absorb the majority of the risk. They have a very strong incentive just to be on time because it's a cost subject. So they are forced just to be on time in the project. It's you give a stable price, knowing you know what's happened every year, and for the client reduce the pressure in his balance sheet because they need to cover every year only the investment of every year, not the overall investment. Does give the customer the possibility just to face another project, to go forward for another project, what is necessary for the utility, and also they keep under control all the problem of quality and insurance. Just to have it, I think everyone knows that it's necessary to have very important key issues to have a success in a BOT. The first is the stability in the area of the country. That's clear. We know what's happening here. The second is to have a very good framework, legal framework, just to do the PPP. That's the case in most of the countries here. And something who is able just to do easy to attract investment, so to have an acceptable warranty condition for the investor and the lenders, because the lenders, they are investing if the project is stable and they have something to win, so you need it. They have the viability in the long-term ramp. The first is the affordable of all the things, especially for the price. The credit issue for the customer is not a problem. And if you have the previous condition, you need to have a bankability. So that you need to be sure all must be respected. There is a sovereign guarantee or things like that to be easy just to get investor with you in the project. And the third, and more important, the first, you need to handle the technology. You need to be an expert just to be sure you are in the construction to be on time. You know all the technical risks, and you share part of the risk, and you are taking part of the risk as a private investor. And so there is a key point just to keep, is the partner to do it must be with a very good experience, either in the construction phase and the operation phase. We try to give a very good answer in this kind of thing, because we are joining in our company all these specialties. We are investors, we are operators. We can see the first figure, the other. We are long-term operators. We have some projects we are operating for 30 years, and we, in some of the main cities in Europe, we are operating the network and the wastewater network for more than 100 years. So we have a very good feedback. We are also in our division, treatment infrastructure. We are the experience of designer. We have the research center. We have all the experience with following the trends of the market. And also we have an engineering company and a construction company. So we are handling all the problems we need to face in this kind of investment. We are leader in services, as we saw in the previous slide, and we are also expert in financing. We try to join all the pieces of these puzzles, having the expert in every area just to have a success in this kind of investment. So it's not our first BOT. We have a long-term concession worldwide, but BOT, we have a lot of experiences in worldwide, in different countries, using different, in different treatments, drinking water, wastewater, reuse, industry, and also in waste. I put an example with two case studies. One is in the area, in Middle East, is in Jordan, and the other is in a developed country. The first, in Jordan, we have a BOT, a long-term BOT. We started in the year 2003, just to treat and reuse the wastewater of the Amman city. I think it's one of the more sustainable plants in the world, because they are able just to produce 85% of the energy needs they have. So that is affordable for the tariff. This kind of new technologies allows us just to reduce the tariff, to be affordable for a country who has not fuel, to have no oil, like Jordan. So we are this commitment just to look what is the best way just to apply the new technologies even when it's necessary a lower tariff. So we did the target, and did also an extension of the plan just to follow the growing up of the Amman city, because they are facing now a lot of problems of population due to the local area problems. And in other hands, another expense is coming from Australia, because I think it's one of the largest BOT in the world. It's a desalination plant who has an investment of 3.5 billion Australian dollars, 2 billion euros, just to produce one of the largest seawater desalination plants in the world, with a production of 450,000 cubic meters per day. We did all the investment. The plant was on time. The plant is able just to produce in the year 2012. And now, as more or less 80% of the desalination plant in Australia is stopped, because all the dams are full. But I think with the weather condition of this year, the El Niño, I think most of the seawater desalination plant in Australia start to work, because they are facing to a very dry year, and we can see all this kind of investment in production, like in Sydney and other. It's a very good example of BOT, because it's a long-term commitment, 30 years BOT, but also it's recognized by the industry. We won 3 Global Water Awards in 3 different years. One of them was the financing against the debt, and we won a prize for the method we are innovating also in this case. Thank you very much for your attention. I try to cover all the targets of our session, and we wait for the questions. Thank you.
Well, just going back to Piers' introduction, I think it's interesting. I think it's correct to say that both Piers and I lost most of our hair by the time we left Thames. I'm not sure what that says about working with Thames, actually. But anyway, on to our current presentation. Thank you for your introduction earlier, Piers. I wanted to focus on the vertical integration of water production, supply, treatment, and reuse, as you see there. Particularly focused on the sustainable solutions for industries. The introduction, the contents of this will be just with a few slides, as you see listed there. As B6, we have assets under management where we produce over 25% of UAE's treated sewage effluent to a very high standard, contractually. So I therefore want to talk about the aspect about what are the blockers to commercialization of this extremely valuable resource. Now, we heard earlier presentation before this talking about what is happening in Saudi with regards to the encouragement towards concessions for reuse. I'm familiar with the policies that are starting to be adopted in Qatar towards trying to move to a stage where the bulk users will not be allowed to use potable water, but they have to move to use of treated effluent. I'll just focus on the UAE market. As I said, it's where we do most of our business in this sector. And I'd like to talk particularly about the disconnect between sources of water and the commercial exploitation. Certainly, it's correct to say, as we all see from this conference background, that the UAE is very much committed and aspiration about the reuse, but what are the issues that prevent it going at a faster pace? Currently, historically, the sources of water production, supply, and treatment are managed by very different government entities, and I think that's a core issue. I often use in discussions the concept of silos, where you have different departments that have constraints towards talking to each other and finding a common goal towards this concept, as I emphasize on reuse and commercialization. Wastewater treatment facilities have been also historically set up far away from population centers. I think when we see some of the modern plants around the region, ones we have built, and the contractual compliance regards odor, noise, and all the other issues that have traditionally encouraged government to put assets of wastewater far away from population centers, I think the idea of decentralization, it needs to move back to plants being close to where population centers are, most particularly because that's the best way to have efficient reuse. If you're far away, 40 kilometers, you've got to pump it and use power to get it back to the areas of reuse. So industrial areas, building a big wastewater treatment plant and reusing it in that industrial area is obviously a direct issue. And really, of course, we would say that the public-private partnership is the core solution towards it, particularly for industries. I just want to touch on this particular slide for a few minutes. This is a source from 2014 from an Augusta university, so it's not our data. And it identifies what I see as the disconnect. Here you see, I'm just summarizing here the desalination used for industries. I'm not talking about other uses. And the volume. I put a market value, because we are talking about investment and the commercialization. The market value here is 240 million dirhams. That's based on about $3 per cubic meter as a market value. I'll just ignore subsidies for a minute. That's a market value. The groundwater is used 460 million cubic meters by industries, and I think everybody from a sustainable perspective would say that that's a priceless commodity. I wouldn't want to try and put a value on that. And the treated water that's disposed to the sea, whilst there's great efforts taken to try to reuse, unfortunately, most of it is focused on irrigation of green areas, and we all know that there is a very big seasonal profile to irrigation. So mixed use allows you possibly to find a better approach. But we have here 1.1 billion dirhams worth of treated effluent that's If you go and trawl the sea, maybe you can find the dirhams floating, which is the high quality wastewater. This is not sewage, this is very, very high quality wastewater that is being disposed to sea. So I think those figures, for me, they're very dramatic, they are very stark, and they does say the need to move forward. And I'm not saying for a minute that there is not an ownership of this. Many governments in the region and in UAE are very determined to do something. So what are those things? For us, it is about the integration of wastewater management, water and wastewater management. The need to accelerate, if you look at what's happening in the region, particularly I focus on UAE, there is a very fast industrialization happening, which is fantastic. It's really good to see. In the 13 years I've been here, and you look at the growth in industries, it's very significant. And supporting a fast-growing population, you will have a great deal of industrial activity. So there is a need to move away from industries using potable water, which should be put to better use, and more importantly, moving away from that valuable, priceless groundwater and using a very high-quality wastewater instead. So there needs to be a much broader, integrated approach towards use. And this is not just about desalination, it's also about the aquifer depletion groundwater. If you put together private funding, know-how, as Miguel was, he illustrated many examples where SUEZ themselves, many of us in the private sector, have the expertise, the know-how. But you have to marry that with a public policy that accelerates the adoption. It requires industries to adopt treated effluent. We've seen here and in other places where there's policy being passed to require district coolers to use treated effluent instead of potable water. That's been quite effective. However, most of the district coolers, their main demand is in the summer. So consequently, you still have a high proportion of wastewater being thrown away to sea in the winter months where industries are at 24/7 or certainly 365-day usage. This doesn't mean, as many people in the public sector I speak to say, well, no, we can't harm the development of industries, we can't change what they do. Actually, if you look at this in a properly integrated way, the industries will save money. They will save money in terms of how they do their operations and in terms of the reuse of the wastewater, not just their own, but the reuse of recirculated water of high quality. So the aspect really of the private finance with private proactive government partner, that's really something we can speak about in terms of our success in Ajman. That project, which was to serve back in 2000, the concept to deliver a wastewater infrastructure to 150,000 population, build a network, build a treatment plant, and then see outfall. It's moved on a lot from there. It's now focused primarily on how do we do to work with the government to get reuse and the adoption of reuse on a much wider scale. We are far from the target we want to be. We have installed reverse osmosis plants to supply high-quality water to industries. We've worked closely with the utility, FIWA, to find ways of substituting. We are far, far, far from the targets we want to be that I described in my second point there. It is about objective to get the full reuse of every single drop. I don't know how long that will take, whether I'll be long gone retired by the time it happens. I hope not. But it does need policy to get this adopted. And this is about things like shutting down groundwater abstraction, where it is more feasible, sustainable to use reused water. It's an understanding that people need to have. This is very high quality water. One of my colleagues will frequently demonstrate to public partners when we come to the RO plant. He will gladly take the water from the outlet from the RO plant and drink it. So guys, this is how safe this is. But I'm not asking you to drink it. Let's talk about using it for industries. This is a policy that really ownership is essential. So if I talk about Ajman, a success story, as I say, we have investment initially in the wastewater, then we moved into expanding reuse, and therefore moving towards establishing an appreciation of the value of this great, valuable commodity, limiting the discharge to the sea, and creating a market by talking, encouraging. But fundamentally, it requires a proactive government. We are lucky in Ajman. We have an extremely motivated government that is highly engaged with the process to help to move that. But there are national policies that also impact, not just local policies. So the whole aspect of the integrated sustainable model of Ajman, it is about stopping groundwater abstraction, you see shown here on the left. It is about, we still have a few trucks, but we're reducing the number of trucks as new development areas grow. We are starting to connect those people. Stop the municipal government wells, use the TSE for irrigation and distribute it around. And importantly, as I say, moving towards industrial reuse instead of potable and or groundwater abstraction, and the aggressive policy the government of Ajman is taking to help this happen through closing down illegal boreholes, which there are around many places. So it really is starting to make a difference, but we need more and more policy to make all this happen. So, of course, we all know the Singapore story. I think another successful model, I think, Miguel, is Perth. I think Perth has done some fantastic things, more relevant to this region because it's an arid area. And I think Perth is a great example of water reuse, aquifer storage and recovery of reuse water, not desal water. So I think that's a great example I encourage public partners to have a look at. It's not that we're asking something new to be done. It's being done successfully, proven elsewhere. So let's, as I say, it's a way forward. I think I heard this said earlier, actually. Business as usual, I think, as one of our Saudi panelists said. Business as usual is not the way forward. Indeed, connecting the silos I like to talk about between the various departments involved in water and wastewater and power, because let's be clear, wastewater moving it around, moving water around, it consumes a phenomenal amount of power. So if we can integrate these water uses better, then we'll have better use of our power as well. So importantly, integrated water management requires change of policy, encouraging policies to get investment to serve industries, to get industries engaged with the need for this. And of course, strong connection, as I would call it, the virtual triangle of the government, institutions, and the private sector. It's no use me telling the government that this is the right thing to do if it's not supported by an institutional fact assessment, independent, that said this, yes, is the situation. And that's why I say it's a triangular approach. So communication, legislation leads to viability and true sustainability. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. So today I'm going to talk about the case of Turkey, which is one of the MENA's countries. And Turkey, as of today, is representing a high potential for water investments. So, as you know, the World Resources Institute has published the water stress map, which will be by 2040. And as you can see, Turkey is one of the most critical regions, ranked at 27th place on the water stress by 2030. If you look at the available water resources per capita, Turkey is very much below the world average or many other continents. But what we can see as well is that the water scarcity is not a specific problem to Turkey or neither to MENA and all the continents will face, even the North America and Australia, will face this water scarcity, which means that the water reuse and desalination will be essential for the coming years. And this kind of investment should start from now, not to face the worst case by 2040. If we consider the Turkish water basins, they are limited, and their quantities are much below the world average, but also the Turkey available resource average also. And the population is growing very highly to reach 92 million by 2040, and with a 70% of urbanization rate, which makes Turkey very much obliged to invest in water infrastructure. And if you consider the big cities like Istanbul, as you know very well, which is the biggest city of Turkey, Izmir or central Anatolia, the water shortage is already existent. So if we consider the situation, which was the case in 2008, only 25% of the water was treated after being used. And for sure, the thermal power plants and municipalities of the big cities are the biggest water consumer and water discharger, and we need to act against that. The good news is that Turkey has signed an agreement with the European Union in 2006 to invest in its water infrastructure to get aligned with the European Union strategies, which makes a total of $42 billion to invest in a period by 2007 to 2023. And out of this 42 billion, 16.6 billion are reserved for water and wastewater treatment plant. And the remaining 25 billion is for the renovation and new creation of the water distribution network. And this is concerning only for the municipalities. And the municipalities made an investment plan during this period of 2007 to 2023, and this represents an approximately $800 million of investment, and half of it will be only for the wastewater treatment plant for the municipalities. And as of today's situation, between 2007 and end of 2015, most of this investment were not realized and are still pending, which makes that after 2016, there will be even more than $800 million to invest in municipalities. And if we look to the situation of the industry in the organized industrial zones in Turkey, the situation is even more critical. As of today, almost 85% of the water used in the Turkish industrial zones are discharged without being treated. And most of the discharge are for sure down to the sea. And this represents about 1.2 billion cubic meter of water per year discharged without treatment from the industrial zones. And now the good news is that the Turkish government has decided to oblige the industrial zone to invest for wastewater treatment plants and recommends highly the advanced treatment techniques. And this is more $30 billion on top of the municipalities' investment. Another good news is that there are large amounts of funds available for the wastewater treatment plants in Turkey. It's about $37 billion for the wastewater treatment, both municipalities and industry. And you can even find some funds from the European Union, central administration, and municipal resources. Unfortunately, PPP is not working yet in Turkey, but hopefully. Another good news, the Turkish government has launched a large incentive program to support the investor in wastewater treatment. You can be deduced from your incoming tax up to 50%, and there are exemptions for custom duty and VAT for the investors, up to 15% of refund if you use locally made equipment in your wastewater treatment. You can have some support for your social security premium support, in some regions some land allocation, and interest rate support and refund. And for the municipalities, they can be exempted also from their electricity bill due to their wastewater treatment plant. So as one of the largest industrial group in Turkey, which is the Akgök Group, and Akkim, we are part of the Akgök Group, we have decided to act and position ourselves in this interesting water treatment market. And since its foundation in 1977, Akkim was active in the water treatment sector with its products as chlorine and derivatives, inorganic coagulants, organic coagulants and flocculants, anticoagulants, and many other chemicals for water treatment. And we wanted to reinforce our position and being aware of the water scarcity. And after a long period of R&D work, we have decided to produce our own ultrafiltration module that we could develop. And because we would like to bring some solutions and preserve our nature and save our waters in our country and neighborhood countries. And as a model, we have decided to combine and propose our solutions with our chemicals, equipment, engineering support, and our expertise on water treatment and water solutions. And as a company, young and dynamic company, we are keeping to grow with our investment in different sectors, but especially also in the water sectors. So, thank you for your attention.
So I'm just looking at the organizers because I think, have I got 2 minutes? Can I just quickly do questions for 2 minutes? We're going to do 2 minutes. The challenge here is that I've got about a dozen questions that have been fired at me by the audience, and I came up with a dozen as well. So I want short, quick-fire answers if we can do that. So, Errol, what's the total effluent production in Ajman, and how much TSE is reused, and how much is discharged into the sea?
The total effluent production is currently about 75,000 cubic meters per day. We use about 50%, close to 50% of that, and the rest is not discharged to the sea, it discharges into the core Ajman.
Excellent. Okay, that's good. One for Miguel. How do you price your services and tariffs in the wastewater field, and how do you cover deficits between revenue generation from tariffs and O&M costs in 10 seconds?
Could you repeat the last question?
How do you cover deficits between revenue generation from tariffs and the O&M costs? How do you manage the difference between the two? The working capital issue, I guess.
I think it's a good question because I think, as the governor of the SUEZ before said, first we are looking what is a support for investment, because one of the things is just to reach the equilibrium in the tariffs, especially in wastewater, because in desalination, I think more the people are conscious because everyone needs drinking water. Not that wastewater is a problem, because the people is not conscious it's necessary to be an affordable tariff, at the same time an equilibrium, an economical equilibrium. So that is necessary just to have a very good support from the framework. So because the framework needs to do sustainable these kind of things, and one of the more important things in the sustainability is the price.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's not sustainable. So the things is just to match more or less the equilibrium of the cost as short as possible. So we try to apply the best technologies to do it, but we are not able just to read impossible things. So it must be feasible.
Fair enough.
That's the thing.
Fair enough. All right. One last question to all of you, but I'm going to start with Alp and we'll move across. And it's one of my questions. This was a debate about long-term investment opportunities in the Mena region. So imagine there was a green entrant in front of you, someone who hasn't been in the region. What advice would you give them based on the decades of experience that you've collectively got between you? What advice would you give a new entrant who's about to come into the Mena region and wants to be doing concessions and work here?
I mean, the advice is very clear. I think it's, in this region, the water sector is very, very important. And we need to save water, we need to save and invest for the water.
Okay.
This is the very easy one.
Spend the time to understand where the policies are and what you can realistically do.
Okay, so I'm hearing focus, focus on the water sector, be patient around policies. Miguel?
Learn what is happening in the sector and apply the best solution, solving the question of every customer. It's difficult, but first it's necessary to learn before landing.
Excellent. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Thank you for the questions, everybody. And if we can thank them in the normal way.